No, it's okay. I have a black friend that lets me say it all the time.
Cut. Let's try that again, but this time a little less self righteous and a bit more blonde, clueless.
Blonde, blonde, blonde. Okay, how about this? But I use an A at the end, not the ER. We're cool, right?
Cut. A bit more spirit, a bit more jazz, conviction, like you own it.
Okay. But Drake says it all the time, and he's Canadian.
Cut. Getting warmer. One more from the top, but this time a lot less Mel Gibson and a bit more Piers Morgan.
Piers Morgan. Okay, mate. I only say it because I understand what you've been going through. Not to oppress you, my nigga.
Cut, excellent, brilliant. That is a wrap. They'll never see it coming. Jim, put that on tape and cue that intro.
Wagwan, are you there? What's good? And you know who this is, baby. The number one podcast in America, dedicated to all you kings and queens of color, homies and homettes, shotters, woo gals, G-boys, and charges. The one and only Jerk Jollof and Collard Greens podcast.
Wagwan, are you there? What's good? And welcome to episode 11 of the Jerk Jollof and Collard Greens podcast. I'm your host, Glenn, aka G Ransom. And today's panel discussion will be centered around perhaps one of the most controversial and polarizing words in the history of the English language and American vernacular, the N-word. But before we delve any further, if you aren't already a follower or would like to learn more about the show, major announcements, and stay up to date on our latest offerings, then definitely check us out on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at JJC Podcasts. Now, if you know anything about me or this podcast, you know for a fact that I never roll alone. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce my brothers in bonds, Dyron, Francis, Chunky, and Dre. Say what's up to the people.
What it do? What's up? What's good? What's good?
What's up, y'all? It's your boy Franchise. What's poppin'?
You
Straight.
D Black was really good. I'm here.
Come on, man. This is episode 11.
Let's get it. I'm ready,
episode
bro.
11, season 2, and that's the energy y'all coming with.
I'm just burnt out from the first season.
I'm just trying to figure out who's gonna call me an N-word.
I'm just trying to. Oh, I'll do it first. Don't worry about it.
Oh gosh.
I'm looking at my notes. I had to like hyphenate the words in between N and the word. I'm just like, all right, the letters in between. I'm just like, yeah, it's one of those words where I don't even feel comfortable writing it on paper.
That's real.
All right, so today's episode, we're doing something different. Before, if you listened to the podcast before, you know we always had a thing called the Black Business Shout Out. But now we've actually decided to open it a bit more to all of our people of color out there that are doing their thing. And we now call this segment the Rep Yours. So to introduce the Rep Yours segment, we like to dedicate this shout out to Rayo and Honey, which is a minority and female-owned business that sells home goods and essentials, pendants, and accessories loaded with positive vibes, clear design aesthetics, and popular one-liners from pop culture and literature. The business also appears to be based out of Brooklyn, so shout out to the BK. You can find out more about Rayo and Honey at www.rayoandhoney, RAYOAND, honey.com. Check her out on Rayo and Honey on Instagram, Facebook, and Pinterest. And Dre, I was looking at her profile. I see that you're a follower of Rayo and Honey over there on Instagram.
Yeah, I have the You Are Magic pennant. I'll drop it in the chat. But it's a really cool thing that kind of have it up in a common place in our spot in our apartment, so we kind of walk by it every day and see it, get a little bit of inspiration. From what I understand, she does these all by hand, so they're pretty cool. It's kind of a cool reminder to have up, so would highly recommend everyone check it out and see if there's any messages that that you may want to see every day. Some of them are pretty funny. There's like a wash your ass one, and thick thighs save lives, and other ones. So I would definitely they absolutely do.
Absolutely.
I think you could even get a custom one too, so definitely check them out. It's one of my favorite things that we have up in our apartment.
I bet. So definitely check her out at Rayo and Honey, Instagram, Facebook, and Pinterest. So you're telling me that you never slid in those DMs?
No, I'm a married man.
Wow, you went there.
Man.
Yeah, I gotta jostle him a little bit. But yeah, we'll definitely need that positive energy considering the topic that we're going to jump into today. And I guess without further ado, let's go ahead and slide into it. All right, so to start off the discussion on the N-word, first question I'd like to ask you guys first and foremost, are you for or against usage of the N-word? And I think that goes without saying, we all know what the N-word is, but I guess we'll start off with Francis. What's your take? Or for or against it and why?
I am for the N-word. Well, one, because I'm not, I'm always for people making their own rules. You have the ability to say things you want to say, and I'm not for general, mandates and removal of stuff like that. But personally, one goal that I've set for myself actually is to eradicate that word from my vocabulary. And we can get into that a little bit later.
Okay.
So you're for the N-word, but you want to eradicate it from your vocab.
That's for my personal preference. Like I said, I preface that because I'm not gonna state what people can and cannot do, but you can definitely make your own choice. But for me and mine, I would say I'm trying to keep that out.
Gotcha. All right, so let's hear another opinion. D Black, what's your take, brother?
I think I'm also on that. You got to be able to choose, right? But but with that being said, like I don't know. I think people should, life is all about consequences. So if you want to, you live by the sword, you die by the sword. So if you want to go around swinging and words around, just understand that, there's going to be some consequences that may come with that. So
is that for Black people too, or what?
Ultimately, that's actually a really good question.
But we'll get into that next. We'll get into that.
Like,
let's first hear, everyone's take on usage of the word first and foremost, because as far as we understand, it looks like everyone's leaning towards freedom of speech, but there's also lately two definitions or two different versions of the word. But
yes,
I guess let's first get into everybody's take on it, and then we could jump into the specifics.
So I can go. I would say if I had to choose for or against it, I'm for it. But I guess we'll get into the caveats on on the usage of it. So I'll leave it at that before we go too crazy.
Go ahead, Chunks.
Definitely for it. Freedom of speech, you can say what you want when you want, but then you'll suffer those social consequences if you say in front of the wrong person. For me, I really don't care. My biggest thing is if I'm not using it around you, I request that you don't use it around me. If you sing a lyric and you end up saying it and you ain't in front of me and in front of somebody else and they smack your ass, that's on you, to be honest. But if we sit here and tell people what they're limited to say, I think we're going to go into a huge problem. So use it at your own discretion and then at your own ass whooping.
So that's about 4 4s, and I'll have to be the black sheep of the group. And I'll have to say that as you guys already know, I'm completely against N-word usage. And I'm completely against the N-word, period. The reason why I'm against it is because I just feel like it's been so entrenched in America's racist past and current. And I do believe in the power of narrative and word. And I just believe it's one of those words that were intentionally used or scourged from racism to hold us back and to keep us back. And I just feel like there's no successful repurposing of it. Like, if I'm not able to say what I want to say without the chance, you can say anything you want to say. You have freedom of speech, and I understand that. I think that's where everyone's coming from when they say they're for it. But I kind of feel like in this sense, if I know I'm saying something that is offensive, vulgar, and potentially can cause harm to me, myself, or someone that I know, then it doesn't even belong in your vocabulary in the first place. So I guess,
and that's it gives it power, right?
Yeah. Essentially, you're giving power to the narrative, to the word, because the whole purpose of calling us N-words in the first place was to make us appear less than human, void of reason. And to me, we're just perpetuating that cycle over and over, no matter if you want to drop an A on it or an ER.
I think even now, like, you don't even have to use the N-word to pretty much reduce our standing in society as it is today. There's so many dog whistles to pretty much put us down that it's just absurd.
Yeah.
I hear you. I feel you on not using the N-word, and I completely respect it. And I will say it in front of you as many times as I want. You just have to endure it.
I guess I guess we'll go. I guess we'll go into. I definitely, whenever Glenn, I know a lot of people who have a similar stance as you, and is definitely one that I respect, and one. I mean, I really don't use the word that much, but obviously around you or anyone else who doesn't feel comfortable with me saying it, I won't say it. But I guess my whole thing is like we cannot say it, but that's not going to stop the people using it for the way that you're saying it was intended for. When a white person is upset and they use that towards me or to any one of us, by us not saying it anymore, it's not going to stop that from happening. So I guess that's my like kind of twist on like, so yeah, maybe we can stop referring to ourselves as that, but that's not necessarily going to stop others from calling us that in those situations that we often see and share those funny videos where people get get the hands layeth on them when they use the word when they're
the
not
paws
supposed to.
on them.
So
Yeah.
I mean, I know we'll get into that, but that's just my only quick rebuttal to that is we cannot use it, but I don't know if that will stop people from using it in like the worst way that it was intended for.
Yeah, so I do have a question about, I mean, not really a question, more of a statement. I mean, there's a thing about out of sight, out of mind. So like, cause when I think back to like my usage from the last few years to where I'm at now, when I was using it more frequently is because I was around people who use it a lot. And the older I got and I'm not around people who use it as frequently, I don't use it as much. I barely use it now. And that's kind of how I see it with other people around us, especially with white people. Because like, I mean, we'll get into the media part of it later, but the word is like everywhere. It's like you can't go anywhere without hearing it. And I think if like, the word is constantly being put in people's face, especially the people we want them to stop using it, it will constantly come as a reminder when we get into like a disagreement or a conversation like a beef or whatever. And I think that's one of the words they would throw at you. I mean, I don't know if that assumption is correct or not, but that is kind of like the way I was processing it in my mind, that if we can eradicate it and hear less of it, maybe the people that we don't want them to actually use it will also stop using it less, and it will become less of a problem in our society.
But then I don't know. So can I counter that, Celeste? Because because the only thing with that is like, so I get what you're saying is like, so basically, if we as a people, as the target group, use it less, then maybe it might encourage them to use it less. I don't think so. I think it actually gives them more power. So then it kind of bodes, if this is maybe where we're going to go in the conversation, but it kind of bodes to, can we repurpose the word by reclaiming it and empower ourselves by using it with the H or whatever? Like, it kind of asks that question, because I feel like us not saying it is going to give it more power when, people that hate us say it.
I kind of disagree. Well, just to throw in on that, I disagree with kind of all those notions, because I mean, we can't reclaim something that we did not create. So it's in that sense, we did not create the word. So how can we reclaim something that we originally did not make? And then yet we fought all these years to kind of circumvent or abolish. And even out of the latter years, attempts from all these, even the NFL tried to abolish or diminish the use of the N-word, which is kind of funny, considering that, NFL is a white brand, corporation business. But in the same vein, it's like whether you want to throw an ER or A on the end, to me, the former or the latter, it all stems from racism. So in a way, we're just repurposing racism. I mean, it's probably one of the only things, we're able to end segregation. We're able to end color only signs. We're able to end all of that. But however, we're stuck with this token of the N-word that just follows us wherever we go. And the fact that it can be so controversial and polarizing, to me is just like, I definitely understand we cannot get people to stop using it, In the same vein, I don't feel like it's our onus to stop the usage of it. There are definitely attempts by us to do so, but to me, it's not our fight to begin with in the first place.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that point. I guess I'm looking at this word, and not to obviously I'm well aware of the history of the word, but I guess I look at this word, its language, and I think there's a lot of examples of words that that we use or don't use depending, right? You know, there's certain words that women refer to each other as, but if a man calls a woman that, right, then it's a problem, right? So to me, I just think that's how I've tried to position it in my brain, is that it's a word that we give power to. And there's a lot of examples of words that I can mention that in certain contexts, it's okay to use, and in others, it's not. So I don't know, kind of how I.
So let's jump into the next point, since we got the fours and the 1 nay, 4 yeas, 1 nay. So for all my people that are for the N-word usage, are non-blacks, let's get into the specifics now. Are non-blacks allowed to use the N-word? White people, non-black folk, your take.
Can I go first? Because I want to. So basically, I would normally say, it's so funny. I would normally be like, of course not. Why would they even use the N-word? But then it's funny because just based on what you said, that, oh, well, it's technically their word. Does that mean that they have onus to the word? I'm just.
Oh man, no.
I'm just saying because I mean, he's like, well, think about it, because it's like, well, it's their word. We can't reclaim a word that's not ours. I mean.
Now you open up a can of worm, bro.
I mean, I look at it this way, right?
I'm just.
Doesn't matter who says it, and like I said from the start, you face that social consequence. If you want to run out in the street and sing whatever lyric, whether it's what are these rappers today? Tupac, Biggie.
Wow. Okay.
Nah, just kidding. But like, it's entrenched in hip hop music. So if someone's rapping a lyric and hip hop has become a worldwide type of music genre, it's like, okay, you decide to say that, whether you say it in the comfort of your car, whether you say it at a bar or a club, that's on you. So I'm not going to sit here and say, oh, you're white, you can't say it. Well, you have freedom of speech. You can say whatever you want. So I'm, like I said, I'm not against the word. I don't use it as often because I'm starting to mature. And it's just like, it's not a part of my natural vocabulary anymore, because I talk differently because of the profession that I'm in and the profession that all of us are in. It's just not something that's used. Now, if we're hanging out and I say it to you or with you, that's between us. But that's what I say behind closed doors. And I don't want to put it out there on the street saying like, oh, I'm a huge advocate of this word. I'm not intellectual. And this is the only word I can find to pretty much relate to somebody else. There's other ways of doing it. But if a white dude came up to me and said, what's up, my N-word? I'm just like, okay, thanks, but you may want to rephrase that because I don't know you. That may be cool with you and your other black homies, but I'm not cool with it. So you're not going to have a quick talk or a quick chat, or I'm just not going to have the discussion with you. To me, it's not about throwing hands at that point. To me, it's like, I'm too grown for this shit. I'm just going to walk away.
You're not throwing hands, Chunky? I thought you were going to be throwing hands on that.
So there are things. No, also, like if it's a situation where they're just like consistently egging it on, like, oh, I'm just going to keep saying it. Yeah, I'm going to hit you right in the throat real fast, right? But if it's a situation I could walk away from, like, okay, you're completely ignorant. So me whooping your ass, like, you see it as like, oh, that's what's going to come. He's going to be an angry black man. He's going to use his fist. He's not going to use his mind. Well, I'm going to use my mind and say, you know what? You can say it all you want right here. Let everyone else hear it. I'm just going to go back to having my milkshake and cookie and enjoying the rest of my time where I'm at.
Because my mind says to beat you up. That's what my mind says to do.
My mind's telling me beat you up.
But my body also agrees.
My drive is telling me don't get arrested.
Yeah, you guys are looking for reasons to stomp someone out. So if I understand Chunky correctly, basically you're saying that it's entrenched in hip hop or music, and basically you're for it, but basically non-white people or non-black people should not use the word.
No, I said you can go ahead and use it. That's at your own risk. So I'm not going to tell a white man that, oh, you can't say that word. Like, knock yourself out.
He's pro consequences.
No, he cannot use that word, bro.
He's pro consequences.
Thank you.
Fine,
you get it, right?
Fine. Well, you just said you're not going to punch the dude, though.
All right, Francis.
But I
let's hear
gave you
your
this.
take
I
on
gave you
it
the
then.
circumstance in which I will
Oh,
punch him.
man.
Let's hear
No.
Francis's take. He's another yay
Well,
for the
yeah,
N-words.
I guess I always have a perspective of my rule is like none. As long as you're not white, you can use it. And the reason why I said that is because I think there's depending on the way you were raised, if you grew up in that culture, in that community, and that's the way you grew up talking. And I mean, if that's how you talk, that's how you talk. I mean, there's a lot of, I mean, we've been talking about hip hop. There's a lot of example, Fat Joe and a bunch of other rappers that we can look at that use the N-word consistently in the lyrics, right? They're not black, but they use it. They get the okay, right? Why is that? Why is that? It's because they grew up like that and they got the pass, I guess. But for me, as long as you're not white, I won't mind it if you use it. But this is where I think it's weird and very uncomfortable if you use it around me. If I met you in a different state and you don't talk like that, and randomly you use it around me, I would look at you like, that's when I feel really weird with you. Like, why are you using it now? Like, if you didn't grow up like that, if you don't talk like that before, why? Are you trying to connect with me in a different way?
You made them feel
cool now?
comfortable enough.
You cool now? Like, what are you trying to say to me, buddy? Come on now. Like, we don't need to go there.
He's trying to relate to you.
Nah, we don't need to talk like that. Don't do that.
All right, so D Black, what's your take on it then?
Yeah, I'm pro consequence, just like Chunky. I live in a world where, it's so funny because I feel like I had so many preconceived notions on what life was supposed to be like, like how we're supposed to structure ourselves. But at the end of the day, this is America and people have the right to do and say and be whoever they want to be. But I just feel like at the end of the day, also, well, I guess on the other side of it is that people need to also fully grasp the consequences of what's going to happen, because I may not put hands on you, but somebody else might. And it's not going to be my fault, if they put hands on you and I'm not doing anything. That's the decision you made, so that's the only thing. Like I said, very much pro consequence.
I mean, what about if nobody never put their hands on that person? It doesn't. It's like speed. It's like speeding, right?
Nah,
you don't get ticket every time you speed.
It's gonna happen.
Some people never get a ticket.
Nah, I can tell you, I've been in situations where people have used the N-word and I put my hands on them. It like I said, it comes to a certain point. So if I always react to it like, oh, someone called me the N-word, I'm just gonna, beat you up. It's just like, no. But there are certain circumstances where it's just like, yo, you have earned an ass whipping, period. And it's not the simple fact that I can't articulate what I want to say to you. It's the simple fact that some people learn the lesson the hard way.
Mhm.
Okay.
Sometimes they have to get the pause put on them to realize that that's not going to work. Because
Okay.
if I put my paws on you, someone else may just kill you because they're just not about that.
Yeah,
So
true.
it's just
Okay,
like,
I mean,
here's an
so-
early warning.
So, I mean, what about the consequence for that person who just hit the person?
I'm going to jail.
Like,
I'm going to
yeah.
jail.
So,
I got
so,
assault.
so which one is
Okay.
greater?
That's a good point.
Hey,
I
which
mean,
is greater?
but here's the
That's a
thing,
good
right?
point.
I'm willing to take that consequence, right? I'm willing to stand
Well,
up
isn't that-
and do something.
One's social consequence, one's like legal consequence.
I don't know, bro.
Like,
I don't know if I'm worried if I'll take that.
see,
I
that's
see.
you. That's the difference between everybody. You just said someone eventually has to get an ass whooping, right? And if I'm the
Oh,
person
man.
to give the person the ass whooping, saying that, okay, I'm going to do this, knowing I'm going to get charged with assault, and I feel as though that this assault is worth the actions I'm going to take, because speaking to this person is not working, and this person's antagonizing me. So yes, that word has a powerful usage, and everybody knows that. You can't sit here and say that you can tell a black person, I'm gonna call you the N-word, and you're just gonna turn the other cheek after I said it to you 20 times in 1 minute. You're poking the bear at that point, and you're gonna catch the pause. That's it.
That was a point. He was trying to poke you. He wanted
Right.
a reaction, and you fell into the okie-doke.
But no, it's not the okie doke. It's just like, okay, cool, N-word. Hey, you know what? I'm not to do. Leave me alone. And
Yeah,
if I
the aggressive black man stereotype. You just
but
fell into
at
that.
the end of the day,
No?
like,
Yeah, that's a good point.
how do you fall into that when it's just like you've been antagonized? That's not conceptually understanding. So if I sit here and say it to you once and you flip out, I can point my finger and say, oh, you're the angry black man. But if I consistently came after you and I consistently said things to you, when you actually displayed walking away and disengaging from the situation, you can't tell me that's the angry black man syndrome. You are literally starting to make me fight, and I took it.
Yeah,
Well, I
yeah,
mean, let's look at some examples
Go ahead.
recently,
Well, yeah.
however, where people of color are walking away from situations, but yet they're still victimized. So it's just like, how do you avoid that altogether? But let's hear Dre takes on that as well. I'll drop my tidbit
Yeah.
and move on to the next point.
Yeah, I was gonna say that. Well, I don't think that I don't give out passes to use words, so I don't think it's up to me to say that people are allowed or not allowed to say something. So that's just personally my take, right? I'm not giving out passes. I think that it's a word. You know, I'll keep on beating a dead horse here, but to me, it's a word that I think is very nuanced. I think there's a lot of it's one of those words, right, where it just, you don't know how the person's going to react to it either way, right? And I know Glenn will show examples of that, but I just always think of that. I don't know if you guys saw that Twisted Tea example where there was a white dude who, you know, Francis, to your point, looked like he grew up with a lot of black people. The way he was saying it, he was using it in a very familiar way. He was not saying it in a, well,
It rolled off the tongue like it's been there.
yeah. I don't want to say that he wasn't using it in a derogatory way, because he kept on saying it, and the dude was like, "Hey, stop saying it." And he kept on saying it, and dude smacked the fire out of him. I don't know if you've seen those like cowboy cams. I don't know if you guys have seen that video. I'll drop the link if you haven't seen it, but yeah, that's my thing, is that that's a word that you use with your own risk. Just like there's words that, you know, Chunky, I'm sure that maybe I could call you that if a random person called you on the street, right? Maybe it wouldn't be okay, right? Francis, I'm sure there's probably words that you guys use within your Nigerian culture, right? That are okay for you guys to use it within your culture, right? Or even within your family. But if someone else calls you that word, it's like, wait, why are you saying that? Like, you don't even, you know what I mean? So to me, it's just kind of like I try to put it in that frame. I know that it's a way more nuanced word, but I try to put it in that like wrapper, because I think otherwise it gets hard.
Well, apparently there appears to be a demand for N-word usage. I'm not sure if you guys heard about it, but last year, an 11-year-old was able to make $1,000 selling. He was a young black child, 11-year-old child, black, made $1,000 selling N-word passes to his white friends. He was selling them at almost 25 cents to 50 cents each a pass. And I'm not sure how that went down, where it was used, how it was used, or if it's like a Monopoly get out of jail free card. I'm not sure, but there is apparently a demand for it. But
That's crazy.
I want to know what the parents,
Young Enterprising King.
did.
Get that man enrolled in some classes, man. You got a businessman,
Smart business, but
Fortune
what's the
500
consequence?
yeah,
They just gotta say, or maybe 25 cents to say it to his face. I don't know.
I have no clue.
Because I can just imagine other kids like, I'm gonna steal an N-word real quick, and they try to say it, and he pops around the corner.
That's funny.
You owe me 25 cents.
Or like he gave out the pass, but like with all passes, right? Someone else didn't issue that
Didn't
pass.
honor
Right?
it. I have a
Paid the 25
pass.
cents to
Exactly.
someone else.
But yeah, like, so does it expire? Is it like good for a day, or is it good for like a month, a year, or what?
Oh my gosh.
That's
I would say
hilarious.
is if you bought one, get your refund, because
I know. I
it's
just want to
not
know what
gonna
the
work.
parents did to the kid. Like, did they send them down?
I'm pretty
Like,
sure there were repercussions for that.
Oh my
Like,
gosh.
But I mean, I guess it's already a no-brainer for me. Non-blacks using the N-word, obviously, no, I'm already against uses of the word. So I guess that keeps it short and sweet in that sense. Let's get into it. Well, I have another question for you guys that are for it. Have you ever been called the N-word before, and how did that make you feel? And we can start off with D-Black.
Oh man. I have been. I think it's funny because anybody who games online, you've been called the N-word.
Oh,
Xbox.
Especially, I don't want to
Halo
be.
parties.
I don't want to put a line between the PlayStation and the Xbox heads, but man, the Xbox heads, they love that N-word, bro.
So many times.
Make it rhyme and everything.
Halo 5, paying $65 a year to be called the N-word.
But here's the thing, and I think it's just funny though, because I like, so in a gaming sense where you already know it's internet trolls, like stuff like that don't bother me. I mean, Selassie will go after you, but that junk don't bother me. Like, Selassie will cyberstalk you.
I will gracefully take the suspension on Xbox Live to let you know how shitty of an individual you are.
that is funny.
I will gracefully take it.
I didn't even see. I never knew Glenn was like that. Actually,
Nah, King Troll. What are you talking about?
That's hilarious.
And now you're giving him a reason.
I was like,
to
how many
troll you?
times have you been banned?
I've been banned about 3, 4. I'm surprised they just don't cancel my account. But you know,
We don't need his money. He just
That's so
yeah.
funny.
So I mean, D, how did that make you feel? Well, it's, so you've never been
So-
called the N-word in your face in person, or
no.
anything?
Oh no. So that's why. So what I was trying to get to. So like even with the online one, it doesn't bother me. I just laugh at it. I just mute them. I do my little quick report and I just move on with my day. But then it's like when somebody has the audacity to say it like to your face, it requires some form of reaction. So one specific example though that I thought was a little bit more complicated was like, okay, so work example, right? It was one job I was looking at, I was trying to get it for a minute, and I was just like, okay, finally got an interview, broke into this industry, and then me and my like immediate like supervisor, mad cool guy. And he was actually from the South, so he had a little bit of southern swang to him, a little southern twang. Is it swang, twang, whatever? But he was
Twang. Take his twang.
a little twang, a little smooth thing with him. Rhyming accidentally. Hashtag Chris Smooth.
That polite racism. Huh?
But even with that, but like so anyway, yeah, but he was really chill guy. And I think we started like clicking really, really early, and he felt very comfortable with me to the point where we like some of that professionalism fell off. And then one time we were like ordering food, and he was like, what do you want? You know, and I was like, oh no, I want that, but I don't know how much we have for our allowance. Maybe I don't want it. He's like, no, I got you my N-word. I was like, oh. I looked at him, he looked at me, we locked eyes. He knew I heard him. I knew he heard him. He tried to like quickly be smooth, like, oh yeah, let me get that. I'm gonna order that for you. And I just like, and it was one of those situations where I was like, I really want this job. I don't want to start an HR situation, you know, off of this job, off of this situation, you know what I mean? So it's one of those where I felt the kind of way, but I let it go. And I mean, mind you, he never said it ever again. But it's just like, how do I like? That's what I'm saying. Like, how do you even handle that situation, right? Like, can you even be appalled if you're offended? Do you keep going? Like, but
Well, I guess let's talk about it then. Like, do you think he was expecting that maybe, you know, that dab, maybe that, oh, you got the notice of approval or that pass head nod, like, oh yeah, my nigga, yeah.
Yeah, he wanted to say, yeah, he was like, yeah. Like,
But-
yeah.
You left them hanging. I mean, is there a way? Like, I mean, has anyone else been called the N-word before?
Oh, I've been called the hard ER. Like,
Okay.
straight up, like, yeah, like, and back in my youthful days, working as a bouncer, like, I called the N-word straight up to my face, and to me, it infuriated me because it was just like I said, he said it, I was just like, cool, whatever, you're drunk, just go, I'm not dealing with it. And then he repeatedly said it, and I just saw red, and it's just like, I think it's something that's ingrained in us as Black people. Like, it's going to get under our skin at a certain point. There's only but so many times you can ignore it, and I chose to put my hands on him. Luckily, I didn't go to jail, so I lucked out in that situation. Will he ever say it again? Highly doubt it. And if he does, another ass whooping coming. But you know, my thing, even if it's a professional setting, I'm going to address it. I don't give a damn about my positioning. It's going to stop right there. I don't care how you feel, how you're going to take it, because if you take it up to HR, not to roll you underneath the tractor trailer, D Black, but if you tell HR this dude called me an N-word, HR is not going to be like, nah, you know, it's okay. It's going to become a bigger story, because if HR does nothing about it and you bring it to the news, then that shines a light on them and they're going to start making adjustments.
yeah.
So you have to check people immediately if you're not comfortable with it, because it shows them that it's okay to say it because there's no actual consequence and you're not going to say anything about it. So do your due diligence and just say, nah, not me, bruh. Maybe Francis, but not me.
So, but here's all right, but sorry, but let me just to counter that. But I feel like, so there's two parts of that. One, I don't think he was trying to be malicious when he said it. So that's the first thing. I'm not saying that it's okay, but I don't think he was trying to be malicious when he said it. And I'm pretty sure, like, he probably just like, you know, my cousin was saying that, you know, he probably had some homies he grew up with. And, I mean, Dre was saying the same thing. Had some cousins, homies he grew up with that just let him say it. And then he probably felt like I was one of the homies. So it just slipped out.
So
You know
I'm
what
gonna
I
hit you
mean?
with this real quick. I'm gonna be honest. If I'm working with someone that's white and I'm cool with them and they say the N word, that's between me and them. Nobody else.
Right, but that's
So
the thing. I'm just not that.
No.
I'm not like that though. But I mean,
That's me.
but here's but then I feel like that's the first layer. I don't think he was trying to be malicious, so I definitely factored that in
Mhm.
to how I acted. But then the second part, right, is just if you've been working. That's what I say. That's why I feel like it's deeper than that sometimes for us, because even as minorities and like we strive, we work hard to break into these industries. We're like ceilinged up where they try to stop us, and then we finally get in, and it's like, damn, I gotta shut down this whole operation because of this. Because I'm gonna say something to HR. They're gonna handle the whole situation, but how am I not gonna get blacklisted in this industry? I don't know. That's the type of things
that's the same thing as the fear before, right? In like the 1960s, 1950s, and all of that. Now your fear of being blacklisted stops you from doing something you feel uncomfortable about.
Yeah.
And my thing is like I said, I mean, I know Francis is not going to agree with it, but like, yeah, I know some white people that we trade the N-word back and forth, and that's my relationship with them, and that's why I say sometimes I'm for it. It's not like, oh, we're hanging out with y'all and they just say it. It's like, no, my group of friends are uncomfortable with it. This is how we speak to one another. This is my relationship with you. If they go out and say it outside of me, that's on them.
Yeah, but that's why guys like my cousin's boss feel comfortable because they have experiences like that, and they think it's okay because they don't know the boundaries because nobody never said it for them.
But like I'm saying is, it's like it's okay with me, but not every other black person is me. You have to define your relationship with that next person. And
So
then
I guess what happens there is also the same argument where they're like, hey, well, all your rap music says it. And that's like almost assuming that all black people love rap music. And that is not the case. So I guess when you have
like rap music.
you don't like basketball?
Well, what era of rap are we talking
That
about?
part.
So, I mean, has anyone else been called the N-word, whether maliciously or benign or not intentionally malicious, but has anyone else ever had that experience other than, D Black?
Sorry, real quick before we keep going, but I just want to say one thing, last thing on that point is that just to tie it all back together, like my cousin was saying, Chunky was saying they beat people up, you go to jail if you beat people up. The last thing is just that, just understand that there are social consequences, even for the people that enact social consequences. So basically, if you're the person that's gonna be saying the N-word, there's a social consequence of you getting beat up, right? But then the person that's now beating you up, they have to deal with social consequences as well, where they may not be able to get a job in that industry. They have to make some sacrifices. And I feel like being an advocate of social justice, it has its own form of consequences.
So
what is
the
point I was trying to get at?
Worth to you? Is it worth standing up for something that you're going to sacrifice your career because you believe something is wrong, or you're just like, my career is more important than his work?
And that's it. Just sounds really selfish to say, but it's like I'm just not that guy that's ready to give it up.
And I don't think
to change somebody.
I actually don't. I agree. Chunky, I understand your stance. And Deep, like I understand your stance as well. Like for one, just to like clear out the air. Yeah, I've only been called that on Xbox. I've never been called that in real life. I don't know how I would react to it. I would assume that I would react differently if I were in a work setting versus like a street setting.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think it's a tough spot, and I don't think that we should ever tell someone what stance they should take, right? I think it's always like unfortunately, you kind of have to do what you think is right. Sometimes speaking up, you don't always prove your point, right? Sometimes people, I've been in other situations where it's not necessarily the N-word, but I've had those like microaggression things where I noticed people said what up to me that they don't say what up to someone else. And I asked someone, I was like, yo, is there a reason why you just say what up to me? Like, I noticed you don't say it to anyone else. And, obviously he's a white guy or whatever. You only said it to me. I was the only black person in the office. And as soon as I mentioned that to him, he got all, I didn't mean it that way. Like, I think you're taking this the wrong, so sometimes it's a very slippery slope. And I know the N-word is a lot more, is a lot worse to be called in this situation. than like someone just saying what up to me, or someone like what up bro, or saying whatever to me. But yeah, I think it's a really tough situation. It's really unfortunate that as Black people we have to make those decisions in our head to like, do I want to go to jail, do I want to lose my job, right? Or do I not want to say anything? Like it's really unfortunate that we even have to have those type of like, you have to play those like games in our head to like, okay, do I want to hit this guy and maybe go to jail and lose my and maybe reinforce, I think Francis may have said it right, maybe reinforce what they believe, right? Sometimes people learn the lesson, right? When you put your hand on fire, some people know to not touch it again, but other people, it may be like, hey, maybe it won't happen again if I use it again, right? It's that like really nuancing, and but to that point, I can understand why Glenn is so so far on the spectrum of not using it, because yeah, it is a very nuanced thing. But yeah, whenever I see people using it online, it's not people who hearing it from rap music. I'll go as far to say that. So to me, yes, it's a part of our. I'll go even further. It's not even a part of. It's a part of our culture, right? So to speak, right? So yeah, it's difficult.
I disagree with that in that sense, and here, I'll state why I disagree. I don't think it's a part of our culture. I think there are attempts to appropriate it for that purpose, and it's not very successful because otherwise we wouldn't be having this discussion today. And I guess my challenge for the group on that sense, for everyone that supports it, is that if no one took a stance against something, if no one was willing to risk their well-being, their comfort, their livelihood, would we be where we are today? No. It's because someone has to check them. That's why I'm so much more against it. It's because the fact is, now you got to consider, oh, well, if someone meant it this way or someone means it that way. It's like, that shouldn't even be a discussion. It's just like, where else can you say a racial slur and get away with it? Is there any other word you can technically say or say online, on media, and not suffer the consequences? You can't even mention Farrakhan now. And he even say, like, some people have perceived his thoughts to be anti-Semitic. It's just like, why do we have to be the ones to always accept these things? You know what I mean? It's like, why can't we've already fought so hard to get where we are? Why do we have to continually accept and accept and accept? And yes, I've been called the N-word before, not just on Xbox Live, but in person, minded my business. And there's nothing worse than feeling like there's nothing you can do. You know what I mean? And just preventing those situations, having that fight to have options, the ability to say no, is more meaningful to me than just simply being able to sit back and do what I do and let things slide off my back. That's my take.
Yeah, so I do have a take when you're done. So I've never, so like I've had a couple of situations where people drove by me, says the N-word while I'm walking on the street. And then I feel like that's one of the most degrading, like, because that's why like the word has this emotion tied to you, especially as a Black man, like Glenn said, there's nothing you can do at that moment. You just look back like, did that just happen? Like, like moments like that, it's like this is so like, you just kind of like go by your day and you have to think about it like that just happened to me today. Like you just experienced that. And those are some of the trauma that we kind of like have to deal with that word, and why that word is so hard to govern and to manage. And that's why, like, for me personally, I'm saying like, I want to stop using it. But, and also to my cousin's point, so this happened to me recently because my wife, with her job, she didn't like the way they manage some of the like the recent news and in the news and stuff. And she reached out to the HR. She did it twice. The first time I was really proud. I was like, yeah, babe, do that. And that triggered some ongoing conversation within the organization. So she did it the second time. She asked me, and I was feeling the same way you felt. Like, I don't know, like you don't want to be that person that's always want to be like, there's just like worry and concern that we have in our head, especially as a Black man, that we don't want to like bring the focus on us because we are so afraid of the consequence, right? And that's kind of what was going through my mind in that example. But it never stopped her though. She still went through and sent that second email. But like, if it was me, I never would have sent that second one. And I'm proud that she did, right? Because it hold the company, the leadership accountable for the things that they are not doing. And those are like kind of examples that we need to set.
Right. So it goes back to
Well said.
what I was mentioning before. So you're going to have to say something and you're going to have to step up and do the right thing. So to pull it all together in the sense that I forgot what podcast it was that Dre had the example where someone was calling someone else the N word and they pretty much got them canceled. So we do have power. So when I've been called the N word, it's been people like blatantly saying it to my face. I'm just like, oh, you got the balls to say it to my face. This is going to be handled. And nothing to take away from you, Francis. If someone has called me an N word when I drove past, I'm just like, I just laugh about it. I was like, you're not strong enough to say it to my face. You don't want to engage. You want to feel powerful. So I'm not even going to let it bother me. But when it comes down to the point where I'm faced with it and there's no other way to turn besides taking it head on, I'm going to take it head on. Whether I do it intellectually, whether I do it physically, that's going to be my choice in understanding the consequences or the achievements behind it. So my thing is that if you can stop it, stop it. And I think we talked about this before. It's within your power and grasp. If you have the ability to do something about it, take that opportunity. Stop having that fear because you're not really making any more progression. We're back in the 1960s. We're back in 1964. So we had the civil rights movements to propel us forward. We have so many means nowadays to report incidents, to get it out there, or to use social media to grab attention to what's going on. If someone says it to us and they own a business or they're a powerful person, people are getting canceled for simple things. So why can't we get people canceled for saying the N-word to us? Why do we still live in that fear? We should not. Use the resources available and correct it.
All right, so let's move on to the next point, because I think that's going to probably cause a little confusion when you at one point say you're for the usage, or I guess for freedom of speech, but yet we should check everyone for it. So how can you be for something but
So
yet
I'll
check everyone
completely
for it at the same time?
I'll completely explain. I'm not saying check everyone. I'm saying this is based on the individual situation. I'm for people using the N-word as in freedom of speech. If you as an individual are put in a situation where someone uses the N-word and you are uncomfortable, then that's your right to say something about it. And I'm not going to say that you're wrong because you aren't, because I don't have your feelings. I'm not going through what you're going through. Me personally, as Chunky, you can say it around me and I'm not going to feel some type of way if it's the A at the end. If it's the ER, I'm going to say something. And that's subjective on my end. You can feel how you feel about it. That's cool, but you're not me. And if someone else that I said it's okay to say the A at the end of it, that's non-black, and they go out and say it to you, that's between you and them, and you're going to check them. If they come back to me and say something like, oh, well, it was okay to say it to you, but D-Black doesn't like it. I was like, that's between you and D-Black. If he doesn't like it, then you need to honor that, period.
Okay. So let's talk about the next point then. Have you, considering the stance on the N-word, what are your stances on other forms of hateful speech or racial slurs? Are they also to be accepted? Is it also freedom of speech? Let's say you own an establishment and someone comes in and they're just ripping with all the racial slurs at every customer in your business. What are your guys' take on that? To throw you in that hypothetical situation, like, what is your stance on other forms of racial slurs based on your understanding of the N-word?
I mean, if I have to, yeah, like I said, my personal preference is to eradicate it from my vocabulary. And if I own an establishment, and that would be the rule that I would have in that space. You know, like, and I kind of talked about my example before when, you know, if I'm in my backyard and I'm with friends, you know, at a certain point of the night, you know, I would prefer for the volume of your N-bomb to be lower compared to, I don't want all my neighbors to hear you. Drop the
You got
N-bomb.
an N-word gauge.
Like, yo, just like, yes, keep it between us, man. Like, that's just how I feel. You know, like I said,
Keep it
like,
at 1 decibel.
Yeah,
Come
yeah,
on, cuz.
yeah.
You got to come better than that.
yo, for real though. Like, I had a real conversation with one of my boys about this. I'm like, bro, don't be dropping the M-bomb outside my house, man. Bring that.
All right,
that
but
stuff
then
inside.
if your boy, all right, fine, touche.
And this is like, you know, a couple years ago.
All right, but touche.
still,
So say, all right, one of your boys says the N-word to another one of your boys who doesn't like the N-word, and the one that doesn't like it goes up top of his head. What happens then?
Well, that's between
you
them.
riding for?
Yo, that's between them. But my rule is like right now in my current state in my life is I don't want to use that word.
So if he turns to you like, friend, save me, you ain't gonna do nothing?
No, I'm gonna stop it because it's my two boys going at it and they're gonna talk it out. Like, why are you trying to, like, if if it's two black men fighting over the N-bomb, like y'all gotta talk about it.
I think as Black community, we just got to
Yeah,
get together and vote on how we want to treat this, because this is inconsistency. And
Nah,
think
but
the
I mean, but that's-
inconsistencies
black people
was
can't
on
be
the
fighting
vote.
between the N-bomb.
Wait, hold on. So, Fran, so you're saying that in that case, you wouldn't ride for any of the individuals. You just let that settle out.
No, if they fight in my house, I'm gonna stop. They're not fighting my house. One.
Just because they're not fighting in his house. That's
You're not
it.
destroying my property.
If it's off of my property
If
onto
you're
the
not
street,
fighting-
that's fine.
You're not fighting in my house. Number two, like you gotta talk it out, man, because because like I said, I'm not for telling people what to say within the black community. That's like where the cap is. I'm not giving white people okay to use it, but within the black community, if you're for it, that's you. But my personal preferences, I'm not using it. So
you had a
if my
couple
friends-
counters.
Yeah, that's it.
Either from D Black or a Chunky, you had a counter going on there.
No, I don't have a
Regards to that
counter.
statement.
Like Francis,
Nah, I
pretty
just
much
think
said
that
the
that
same thing I
doesn't-
said.
Yeah, I just don't think that makes sense.
I mean,
Because-
it doesn't
Go
have
ahead.
to make like I say, it becomes subjective, right? And Francis is allowed to have his own subjective opinion about the situation, and it goes back to what I was saying. There was a bunch of head shakes what I was saying, but Francis just summed it up. Like, okay, if it's between his two boys, he's going to step back out of it. Like, y'all two handle it. That's between y'all. It's none of his business, pretty much. You guys are two adults. You would hope they'll be able to verbalize how they feel instead of punching someone in the chest. So outside of that, it's just like I don't think, like, as a black community we need to come together and figure this out. It's just like, no, that's the beautiful thing of just having your own opinion as a whole. As me personally, this is how I feel about it. You feel differently, then you're allowed to feel that way.
So here's my thing. I feel
Yeah.
like, first of all, oh my bad, Drake. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, this us five people make it very clear that black people are not a monolith, right? So I don't think we would ever be able to agree on whether we should use it or not. My stance is, if you're a non-black person, don't say it around me. I'm not calling a non-black person that word. I try to use it less and less as we speak. I mean, I've never been called that word. So Glenn, I think maybe if I was called that word multiple times, if you have, maybe I would have a completely different stance on it than I have, because I've only been called it in like an Xbox chat in that way. But yeah, I don't think we'll ever come to an agreement on whether we should use the word or not. I know the NAACP had a funeral. Yeah, I know they had a funeral for the word.
What the heck was that about?
So to speak. But yeah, I think,
And then
very
it rose the next day.
It was
Okay.
a symbolic funeral.
yeah. I mean, and to answer your question, I don't use any other slurs for other groups. I mean, maybe I use slurs within my Latino side that maybe there's similar words to the N word that are used, but yeah, outside of that, I'm not really using a word that's not within my from a community that I'm not a part of, right? I know that there's
Quick question,
words
Dre.
within the LGBTQIA community that they're allowed to refer to each other with certain phrases that if I were to use that word, I would be canceled or whatever, however you want to frame it, right? So to me, it's just I have a lot of examples. I know I'm probably
So
annoying everyone,
quick
but-
question, Dre. Sorry, but like,
but
I think you might have sort of addressed it, because
Yeah.
I feel like do other ethnic groups use their
oh yeah,
slurs like we
yeah.
use,
I have a
like black community does it?
I have a one of my really close friends who's Jewish. I've heard him use words where I'm like, I don't feel comfortable you saying that word around me, right? And it's his right. It's a slur that he was using it to refer to another Jewish person. I felt weird him saying it, right? And maybe that's how some white people feel when black people are using it. I don't know, but to me, it's not my place to tell him he can't use that word, right? That's a word that's a word that the Nazis used to. I know, wasn't it Miles, the basketball player on the Heat? He was caught live streaming saying one of those Jewish slurs, and then he eventually got. So yeah, I think
Out of the league.
Yeah. So it was a very
So-
I think, but he suffered the consequences for that word, right? So,
But here's my thing. Like, I think the
Yeah.
dangers of that argument, not saying anyone was trying to make
Sure,
that
sure.
argument that other
Yeah.
groups say it and it's okay, but I mean, other groups have also been marginalized. Other groups have
Absolutely.
also been profiled. Also, groups have also been victimized. So does that make all those things acceptable? And I think one of the key things that Chunky touched on, not to be overlooked, was the dual consciousness of being a Black person, right? Like being a Black person in America, then also trying your best to be an American citizen and not getting that recognition. So yes, there will always be that circumstance or issue where we are subjected. Like every fight towards the Black community, every plight towards the Black community is our plight. And in my opinion, is our issue, and it's up to us to then justify, or sorry, not justify, but rectify and correct, because that's just a part of the it's essentially, you have no choice in the matter, but a part of being melanated in this country and anywhere else you can go where you're potentially marginalized as a Black person. So it's a struggle that's constantly ongoing, and that's why I feel it's essential. Why I'm so much for against it, and essential to kind of set those parameters any way possible. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah,
Trey.
I think that's a great point. I think what is difficult about this conversation is that we're talking about two different things, right? We're talking about us using it or people within our community using it, and whether we want to use it or not, and what is our take when other people outside of the community use it. And I think that's what makes it so difficult, right? Even everyone having kind of slightly different, like Francis, his thing is that as long as you're not white, you could use the word, right? But to me, that's not okay, right? So it's like one of those things where it just is like we're talking about the word, but we're talking about the word in like so many different ways, right? Which makes it really difficult, right? Because it's not as simple as just, okay, we're not going to use the word anymore. But if somebody else uses it, then we're still having that conversation about like, how do we react when people use that word, right? So it's a very...
Yeah. So let's touch on that then. So we've already talked about non-blacks using the word. So what's really the difference between someone, for the people that are for it, the usage, what's the difference between someone Black using it maliciously and someone white using it? Like, why is there a barrier between color on usage of the word? What's the understanding there?
When you say malicious is intent, malicious is intent. I don't care what your background is. If you're using that word maliciously, even if you're Black, I'm still going to feel some type of way.
So how do you know when a Black person is using it maliciously? So what's the difference between if a Black person calls you the ER N word, white person calls you the ER N word, what's the difference between the two?
Well, I think the Black person, we kind of, skin. I mean, obviously, if you're having a confrontation with another, Black person, and then they use the ER, you probably are just focused on what they're saying, like the vernacular, whatever, the volume and the intensity of what they're saying, and taking that as offense. But when a white person says it, even if they're saying the exact same statement, you'll take, like, again, the same level of offense will be there on the base level. But then, when they say with the ER, now you're like even more irate because, now you're saying something that you shouldn't say, right? So still, white people technically shouldn't say it.
I think if a Black person says it the same way, like your intent to use it with an ER is a malicious intent, period. If I don't care which ethnicity says it, damn well when you say it to be that way, you're trying to be crazy offensive. Like you're not even respecting me anymore because you know what that means in our society. And for you to use it against me really means that you're out to try to hurt me. Period. That's it. So I don't see a difference in that. I'm not going to say, well, this Black person or this Hispanic person is white person. No. Anyone who drops the hard ER at the end in a heated conversation, your point to me is just that you're just trying to disrespect me to the fullest extent possible. And I can't carry that conversation with you. I can't have anything else to do with you. There isn't mending a fence on this. Like, we're just done at that point, no matter how mad you are.
I don't know. I feel like it's just different. For example, like the scenario that Glenn asked me, if the person who was in my house was white, the conversation is totally different, right? So it's like, well, it was two Black person going at it and they were trying to fight. I think you can work that out. I think it's just hurt a little bit different. It's like girls using the B word with each other. Like when you get into a fight, and they call each other the B word, if a guy comes in and says it, it's different. It's like the fight goes from I'm about to beat up this girl, then they're both about to be against this guy who just walked in. It's like, there's at the end of the day, there's still a difference there because we talked about we want to take ownership of the word, taking away from the same person, one race. If that same race is using it, it just we are giving the power back to them. To me, I feel like, and we're not really at this point. If people are, I mean, I feel like we're not really. The word is still there's still that emotional tie to it. We didn't never really took it, you know. It still hurt when
Yeah.
people use it. They want to hurt your feelings still.
Think that Glenn's mentioning of the like if a black person calls you that word, I do agree that there is a way that a black person could say it to you in a way that's just as disrespectful as if a white person said it to you. It definitely is about the context in which it's said. So I wouldn't immediately say like, oh, a black person saying it, he's not meaning it that way. You know when someone's talking to you crazy, right? If they're saying it in the way to be like the most disrespectful, I won't say it, but you know what I mean? Someone adding all the adjectives before it, right? You ignorant, whatever. You know what I mean? I think there's ways that anyone can use language, right, in a way to where right, I could probably call, Chunky Twinkle Toes, right? And I'm sure I could say Twinkle Toes in a way that he would find funny, and I'm sure I would probably find a way to say it in a really disrespectful way. So I do think that word can be used. I think it can sting, maybe not as. I guess there's an argument for it stinging as much, if not more, coming from someone from your own community. This does make me think of that example. I don't know if you guys saw that example where I want to say it happened a couple weeks ago with Kyrie Irving and Dennis Schroeder. They had a little bit of a flare up on the court. And this is what I love about Twitter. Everyone kind of saves a video and like zooms in on the people's face. And you saw
read their lips.
yeah. You saw that Kyrie was really upset at Dennis for something, right? And you didn't know what it was, but then you later, understood that Dennis was like, damn, and we're like, why are you so mad? Whatever. And Kyrie heard that, right? And Kyrie heard it in a way like, you don't know me, don't call me that. I don't like that word or whatever, right?
Yeah.
And these are two black men. Now, obviously, there's a little bit of there's some nuance, right? Because Dennis Schroeder is a German-born black man, right? Versus Kyrie, obviously being born in the States. So, to Kyrie, the way that Dennis Schroeder said it to him was in a very disrespectful way. Whereas, maybe some people looking at the video, the way that Dennis Schroeder said it was like, like he didn't mean it that way, right? But maybe Glenn would take it that same offense, right? Even if someone is quote unquote using it in a non-disrespectful way, that's the thing, right? Kyrie took it the way that he was supposed to take it, right? That that was his honest.
All right,
You can't use Kyrie as a reference because Kyrie's just weird.
No. Let's keep it.
Don't entertain it. Don't entertain it.
Let's keep it in the box, right? He was a black
play with my
man
man
who
like
didn't
that.
like another black man saying it. Kyrie is a interesting guy, but I think
I love Kyrie. Don't do my man like that.
I think that was a
I
really
guess-
interesting thing that divided the timeline. Which is
My
really
last
interesting.
question on this, then, before we get into our finisher, then, is hearing all of this, and we've mentioned freedom of speech, the use of it in hip hop, attempts to reclaim, something that we never even started to begin with in the first place. But would it be then unfair to say if the skin color is the difference between defining intent, whether it's malicious or benign on usage of the word, would it be then unfair to say, considering how widely used this word is, that all white people have the understanding that this word is offensive? Like, is it unfair to then say that, hey, you're white, you should know that this is offensive. However, you have freedom of speech and everyone's using it. So I guess what's your take on that if you're for the usage of the word? And then we'll get into our finisher.
Wow, that's a good point.
I mean, straight up, I don't waver on my stance. Everyone knows how offensive that word is in America.
Is that true, though?
I don't think so. Yeah, that's a good point.
Okay, so can you let me finish my statement?
Go ahead.
Not you, Glenn. I was talking to D-Black.
Oh,
D-Black needs to be quiet because I'm talking. It's when you learn about American history, you learn about this, right? If you went through the American schooling system, you get an idea. There are movies, there are a lot of different pieces that shows you how offensive and effective the N-word was and how we feel as though about it today and how we respond to it. If you meet someone who just came to America from a different country, doesn't know really the history of America, I can understand that they don't know it. But if you're with someone who understands American history, who's been here for a while, for multiple generations, they can see how offensive the N word is. As I mentioned before, I don't draw a line on color when it comes down to that hard ER, and Dre gave a great example. No matter who you are and if you're saying it, you know how offensive it is. There's no one that goes out and just says a hard ER to somebody like, it's not that big of a deal. They know it's something. So my stance on that, a hard ER is going to hurt anybody's feelings or disrespect or demoralize anybody, no matter what your race is. I don't draw a line saying that, if you're white or you're black, it means something different. It means the same thing, no matter what your background is.
Yeah, this is Glenn's superpower of asking you a question that's gonna maybe make you go back on a point that you previously made. But yeah,
contradiction, react.
I think it's one of those things where it's I think it is possible that there are let's just say white people in America who don't understand how damaging that word is to a lot of people.
Piers Morgan.
Well, he's British, right? So, but I do think it's possible. Now, I'm not gonna say across the board. I don't think we could say across the board everyone knows about the word, because I just honestly don't think it's true. I think, sadly, if those people aren't surrounded by Black people, I don't think they would understand, right? Like, how would you know if you've never been around Black people who let you know that word, right? How would you learn something just by watching movies or whatever? What if you're not watching the movies where it's, you know what I mean? Like, what if they're not listening to that music? What if they're like, there's people who live in completely different alternate kind of realities. I've always lived on like the coast, right? Where there's always been Black people, white people, whatever. But there's people whose existence is like Deep, like you was telling me that like you was working with, like you were going someplace and like one of the people you're working with, like she made it clear to you that like she didn't meet very many Black people, right?
Yeah, and I had to like educate her on what Black people were.
To me, I think it is possible. I'm not giving no one an excuse, right? Again, I still hold firm to the stance of if you say a word or if you do anything, right, there's always a consequence to it. Now, whether you knew better or whatever, that doesn't count, right? If I broke a law and I didn't know the law existed, I still am guilty of breaking that law, right?
Nah,
so
get out of jail free card. No,
yeah. I mean, that would be interesting.
Life is Monopoly.
If you didn't know, you're like, I didn't know about this law. Like, I didn't know I couldn't rob a bank. Like, so
I'm like, oh, buddy, you can just go. We're sorry for bothering you.
Yeah. So.
Glenn
is very sneaky. I just want to say that he is very sneaky with these. With the formulation of these questions.
Yeah, I do.
No. I'm not taking anything away from it. I'm just saying it's one of your skills. It's one of your skills of kind of positioning questions in a way.
Not today.
I do have a. No, it's interesting how you make that comment, because I think even people within the minority group, I think some of them actually are uncomfortable using the word, even though, in my preference, I say it's okay for them, for none, as long as you're not white, you can use it. I know plenty of Hispanics or Asians or other who actually don't feel comfortable using that word because they understand the background and the intent of that word. So first, they made a choice that they would never use it, and they stand up for people that use it around them. So I think that information is widespread. I think media does complicates it, and that's kind of, we didn't really. I'm not sure if we plan to go into the media question, because I personally think we need to. Rap music it's way too complex. My story, I shared this episode 7 when one of my buddy, he was in a car with me. He's white guy, and he was rapping to, I think it was 50 Cent, one of 50 Cent joint, classic song, and he's dropped the N-bomb twice while he was rapping to it. And I looked at him like, bro, don't say that around me, man. Like, this is, I was like, bro, like, don't use that around me. Like, I had to tell him. And this is like less than a month ago. Like, so that's why it's so hard to govern and to manage that word. Like, especially, it's so widespread in music. It's like, it's so complicated.
Like, but
I have a question.
My Black best friend that allowed me to say the word.
Yeah, I was gonna say. So
I'm not. I'm not one. I'm
I
not one.
bought the pass for 25 cents.
Here's your black card.
I did.
Wait,
I
wait.
never. I
This
never
one is
give-
free.
I
Wait,
never
so
give
Francis, I have a
anyone-
question. I have a question.
Yeah.
So you only told him not to say it around you, not that he shouldn't say it. Period.
No, I said don't use it. Don't use that
Okay.
word.
Oh, okay.
I
Okay.
don't use that word. I was like,
okay.
he was like, I may not be the one to punch you, but somebody else
Okay,
might.
okay,
I told him that.
I just wanted that clarification because it sounded
I
crazy.
did not. I did not tell him it was okay to use it around anybody else. No, I told him don't use it, and he apologized. Like, good, you know.
Like, better apologize.
Or else I'll write an angry letter.
I guess, D, do you have any points on that, or you're good?
Nah, man. I think again, freedom of choice, freedom of consequence. So, and then also when it comes to like other groups, it's the same thing, you know, like they I think there's, like my cousin said, that, you know, there's people that will sympathize with other, you know, ethnic groups. Like we don't want our word used against us, so why would we use yours against you? You know what I mean? So
Our word?
oh yeah, I forgot we don't own it. We don't use the word that is used to. I'm complicating it, but you get my
word,
point.
let's
I
go.
get what you're saying. But I mean, I guess my tidbit on that before we get to the finisher is just basically how many of you were actually taught? Now, I understand we have Nigerians in here. I'm Jamaican. You know, so many of you, I think Francis, you know, you came from outside the States and you traveled here. How many of you, to argue about who's teaching who about the N-word, how many of you were taught in Black history or took Black education, the Black history courses? How many of you were taught the actual use of the N-word? Was
None.
the N-word ever a discussion in school? So how was it ever a discussion? Was it ever something that was brought up to
Officially or
you?
unofficially?
Or, I mean, there's only one way. So only
No, there is. No,
Is
there
there
No,
an
like he's like,
unofficial
there's
way?
not homie around the corner. Like he just hits you.
Yeah,
up and
like-
teases you.
We're
Nah.
saying there was an argument made that, you know, people are going to school, they're getting education, they should know, but how many schools are actually teaching this? Have you ever learned this in school? Because I for sure haven't.
Nah,
So
absolutely not.
like I said, it depends on who you speak to and who you talk to. I know a good history teacher that I talked to about the N-word, about the historical context of it.
Or are there schools
not in
actually
curriculum,
teaching
not
people
like
how-
So
curriculum.
once again, so that's one of many ways that Glenn likes to phrase things. No, there is no curriculum about the N-word, but there is an unofficial way you can learn more about the N-word. And just because it's not taught in school doesn't mean that it's not a way to learn about it. So when you talk about us as in African Americans, I learned more about the N-word from my family than I would in school. Because in school, they try to avoid offending people. They're not going to have class like, oh, we're going to say the N-word this further away down or in this week. So that's why I asked you unofficially, because that unofficial conversation that wasn't in the school curriculum gave me a better notion and idea of what it is and where it started. And then there is enough history out there that I can Google it, and there are textbooks on it about its origin. So there are official texts about it. Just because it's not taught in a school curriculum doesn't mean it's information that I can't receive. So like I said, unofficially or officially, you still can actually research it, and there's legitimately published documents about it.
But in this sense, because so we can say clearly that it's not something that's taught, everyone has to learn when they're going to school. It's a choice. So if I don't understand this until I say it, because I've heard it used so many different places in media and music, and I've heard it used as a term of endearment, I've seen other Black people using it. I have Black friends. I didn't elect to take the course because I didn't think I needed it. You know what I mean? So now I get punched in the face for using it, or I get the side talk. I mean, how am I a person that's non-Black at fault for that if it's not something that everyone's required to learn? Like, I have to go out and learn it. Like, if you want to know how to drive, you have to take classes. You just don't hop in a car. You know, what I
That's
mean?
just like
You're up
saying,
against
like, Glenn brought up, not Glenn, Dre brought up a good point. Like, there are other communities that have their particular words, right? So in those communities, there isn't an official like class about what words I can use against, you know, the LGBTQ community. And I know what words not to use with them. This wasn't taught in school. I have a clear understanding what not to say to them. I have a clear understanding what not to say to females. This was not taught in school. This was actually gradual learning through life. Like I said, when I throw in the unofficial thing, there are things we learn about life that aren't in schools that helped us move forward. And AKA, I will call that common sense. And common sense is taught in various different ways. It's not
Through
necessarily
life.
taught in school. So when I say this, I mean to say that just because you're not taught it in school doesn't mean that you're not going to know about it. And we talked about this in a couple of podcasts ago, was that we didn't feel as though, some of us didn't feel as though that we were the official teacher of what to say to Black people. But once again, it's just like, if you say something to me and you are uneducated about it, I'm going to take that one opportunity to educate you and then move forward from there. And I took that responsibility. This is exactly to what you're saying. If someone doesn't know about it, I'd rather give them the benefit of the doubt before I punch them in the throat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, I do understand what Glenn is trying to say, because recently what actually happened in Minnesota, I'm not sure if it made the national news, but there was a sixth grader that took a gun to middle school, and one of the information that's going out, and unfortunately this is actually up the street from my house and the middle school that I went to, the kids yelled "Black Lives Don't Matter" and shot the gun. And luckily, one of the teachers or security guy was able to disarm the kid before he was able to like harm anybody. But that is like literally kids are, I mean, I feel like we need to start teaching some of those information at an early age, because they are, if they're not learning it from the parents or from school, from positive people, they are going to learn it from everyone else, and it may be the wrong information. Like, or they're not getting the full information that they need, or all the details to make the proper assessment or and make their own decision what is right or wrong. So I am definitely for, I don't remember
Yeah.
learning it, but
What if
I
it's the
definitely,
parents teaching them
you
the
know,
bad information?
well,
That's
that
really
could
cool.
happen too. Yeah,
Yeah.
but at least, you
Yeah.
know, that is their responsibility, you know.
So it's almost like you have to survey every white person that used it. Did you ever take a class in Black history?
Yeah, I don't. Well,
You did?
I mean,
Or
that's
you
a
about to catch
whole.
us out?
I mean, that's a whole other. That's
So
a
I
whole
can beat
other.
you up.
That's a whole other like bag of words. I remember. I want to say there was like two books I read in school that had the word in it, right? Like To Kill a
What?
Mockingbird.
Really? No.
To Kill a Mockingbird
Huckleberry
had it.
Finn.
Yeah,
And
that's
Huckleberry
right.
Finn had it, and I remember reading the word and was like, "Whoa!" But we didn't have we didn't break down that word. Now, from what I understand, I know some school districts are either removing that word or they've changed the text to not include that word, which is really interesting. But yeah, I don't remember speaking about it in class.
I'll just say my last 2 points on this. I mean, we're going to have our differences, but there's no word that's been used the way the N-word has. Like, if you want to compare it to other words, it's just, there's no comparison. There's no word that's been used on this platform as much as the N-word that has so many nuances. You can quickly get canceled for using some of the other words, racial slurs or defamatory remarks of people's genders or sexual orientations. It's clear cut. But
I think that speaks to, but I think that kind of speaks to how we're still kind of marginalized as people, right? If we have reasons why this word is so terrible, and it still seems as though, now there are some people who are getting in trouble for using the word. Like we can't completely throw that away, but I don't know. I think that goes to speak to how there's still a lot for us to go as far as the word, because
okay. All right, so let's get to our finisher. We'll conclude the episode, and definitely, if you want to hear a part 2, let us know in the comment section. As there's a lot to touch on this, but let's get to our finisher. So, if there ever is to be an abolishment of the word, who do you guys feel would be responsible for carrying out that abolishment? Should it be the media, communities of color, or non-whites? White people.
For me, I think it's only really gonna be impactful if it's removed out of media, because I think media is what's actually like encouraging, the younger generation to say it. It spreads a lot faster. I mean, it's one thing if it's like a small community, like they're N-wording left and right, and then the kids are N-wording and stuff like that. But without the media like carrying it and spreading it further out, I don't think it's gonna hold as much weight. So I really think just taking it out of media is going to just change future generations from saying it, or at least discourage it.
Yeah, so this kind of goes back to my first point about out of sight, out of mind, because I think if we stop using it, especially in rap music and media, I think it definitely starts within our own community and how we change just how we use it. And the hope is that will there'll be that trickle down effect that will happen with the rest of the group as well. So for me, I think it starts within us, both through social media and hip hop. So.
All right, Dre, Chunky.
Yeah, I think it would have to. The only way I could see it happening is if it were within each community, each and every community. I think would be the way. I think that would probably be the strongest of the thing. I think the media usage is. I don't know how big of a effect that would have, because I think there are people who've never heard it in media who still use it. So, I think it kind of, I think we've talked about this in other podcasts, right? Kind of being the change that you want to see, right? So I think it would have to be within each community, right? Each community coming together and saying, we're not going to use it, right? I think that would be the only way to truly abolish it.
All right, Chunky.
I'm out for abolishing it. To be honest with you, it's just like whether, especially the ER, right? Because that's a point in history that should never go away. To show that what we overcame, what we went through, and how we were treated, and how we were still treated years after that. So if you start forgetting about it, when you start bringing up those points, like, oh, that's the past, it no longer is. It's like, no, this is something that people need to constantly learn. Taking Glenn's point and actually implementing it, that should be something that should be taught in school. Keep the N-word in the book, saying that this is how Black people were treated. And they still weren't treated equally, even up right now to 2021. So it's just like, don't get rid of it. It's really not about the word. It's about the treatment of us. The treatment of us has to change, not by changing words, but by respecting demand and actually getting it. If you call me the N-word, I'm already being treated equal, I can brush that off. You call me the N-word and not being treated equal, it's going to infuriate me even more. So whether it be the A or the ER, it should stick around and stay. But I believe that once we're treated equal, then that goes away. I'm like I said, I'm 100% for freedom of speech. If I'm watching The Color Purple, if I'm reading Huckleberry Finn, I'm grown enough to read it, and it sparks a conversation to say, okay, what does this word mean? Just like any other curse word or that we found out, or any other word we found out in life, we're going to ask questions about it, and we're going to get the historical context, which makes us appreciate what's happening more. It's that level to me that I think is important.
All right, and that's to finish up. I agree with Chunky and mostly everyone on a couple points and disagree on others. The point I do agree with is I do not believe in censorship. So when it comes to uses of the word in a historical or journalistic context, like if someone is quoting something someone said in an article, I have no problem with that whatsoever. If there's a film being made about a certain era in time where that word was used a lot more prevalently and for malignant reasons, then that's a part of history that should not be censored. That's in fact what it is. And that way we understand the weight of the word as well. However, I don't feel it falls on any one particular facet. I think it's across the line, like non-Blacks, Blacks, and the media have some responsibility for how the word is used and portrayed. And essentially, I do believe there's power in words and narratives, because if there's any way I want to identify how less than you are than me, that's with a word. That's not in what I afford or give to you. It starts with saying these people are the N-word. The N-words are this. They're less than human. They don't think, they only feel. There's a reason why that word stuck and it was implemented, is because it made it a lot easier for people to digest. Like, they're not human beings, they're N-words. When men go to war, what do they refer to their adversaries? They don't call them other men of valor or other prideful men. They call them they have words, and there's a reason why they implemented it. It's because we want to dehumanize, and that's how we subject people. So my opinion, if we never understand the power of narratives, we completely lost the war, and we'll never get the chance to change our narrative. So for more content and to learn what the next episode will be, check us out at JJC Podcast on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. Podcast episodes drop every Wednesday. So definitely stay tuned for the outro as well to learn additional information on how to reach out to us. Our email is jjcpod@gmail.com. If you'd like to drop some feedback, comments, or questions to myself or the panel. Hope to see you all again next week. Until then, stay blessed. Peace.
Peace.
And that concludes today's episode, but that doesn't mean the conversation has to end. As a matter of fact, feel free to check us out at JJC Podcast on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter for our post-discussion question following the release of this episode. If you are a Black or minority business owner or professional that would like to be featured on the Rep Yours segment of our show,
or a listener with some general feedback for the podcast panel, feel free to shoot us an email at jjcpod@gmail.com. As always, likes and comments are always appreciated. Be sure to subscribe or follow to be notified when the next episode releases. And until then, stay safe, stay blessed. Peace.